Hello and welcome to the second episode of Firespeech. In today's discussion, we'll be talking about the role of science in today's society. Science has played a very important role in our society because as soon as we discovered that there are certain fundamental principles and ways in which the world works, it has enabled us to manipulate the world, and the whole technological revolution has been a result of this. Today, I feel science is at risk because of all the political correctness around it, and conversations like these are a step in the right direction to bring back integrity to science.
I guess I would break up the role of science in society into a few categories. One category is just the effect that science has on the way we view ourselves in the world. For example, when you look at a picture of the Hubble Deep Field, this huge, vast expanse of galaxies. Um, I think it changes the way we view our place in the world. Um, but then on the more practical side, science brings about medical advances and military advances and other technological advances. And those, I think, are sort of a mixed bag. Some of those improve society, and some of those can make our lives worse. And so I think we should uh, sort of look at science on maybe a more case by case basis, and try to think about the ways in which it's contributing positively to society.
For me, science was exciting because I had teachers and a, a parent, my father, who showed me examples and taught me geology, astronomy, um, chemistry, processes that were fascinating, and they showed me the beautiful complexity of the world around us. Um, with the philosophy behind um, political correctness, there is no room for objective truth. There is no overarching narrative. There is no room for a unifying theory to be dreamt of. There's no passion to discover. There's no joy in the beauty of science. And that worries me tremendously. It's hard to imagine what the next fruitful orchard is to explore in the sciences that will give opportunities to greater innovation. Is it all AI and automation? If so, that leaves us with a lot of problems, a lot of jobs that will go away. What will people do? Will that automatically lead us to a post scarcity society? If so, then okay, then yeah, we can make art and have our families and enjoy life and living and find other modes of purpose. But if not, then that leads to almost a idiocracy version of the world where um, I don't know. There's concerns there, but what else besides AI uh, could we spend our time on to developing? What avenues of science are the most promising in terms of uh, low hanging fruit to pick? And that just seems to open up a Pandora's box. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities and interesting things to explore there, but what else, could we discover in chemistry or look what other things could we strive for? Um,
I think
This-
biology is sort of the next frontier in a way. I mean, a lot is known already, but there's so much that's not known, and so much potential medical applications and agricultural applications and all sorts of things that haven't been tapped into yet.
Yeah. And some of this also has to do with the fact that not many people get into biotech as well, because there's it's very hard to get into biotech, and like it's not the same as computer science. The problem is the benefit of going into computer science is that there's nothing outside.
Barrier.
Yeah, there's no barrier. There's no entry barrier. If you know how to code, you can just go ahead and start doing things. And with biotech, you already need a understanding of all biology, and then you also need to be you need to stay away from all regulations and all kinds of things like that as well. Maybe it's because of that, like not many people have gone into it. And also the other thing about what you were talking about with AI is um, what concerns me the most is the fact that how few, like how little of us understand this idea of AI, and the technological gap is constantly increasing. Like the people who understand technology and who knows how to use these things, and like the people who are actually making things. So the gap between developers and normal people is expanding every day, which is very dangerous because we are all interacting with technology every day and we don't even understand how these things work.
Well, just up until recently, I've had a very Luddite view of AI and distrust, and I still am. There's a lot for me to be concerned about, I think, aptly. But I do see a lot of, I see a lot of good people working on positive solutions, like Lex has enlightened me to the really positive benefits, or the goodwill of people working in it. That it's not like the pure greed of like algorithms trying to get our attention all the time, and um, the risk of people losing their jobs and to automation. That there's more to it than that. Um, that and just accept that it's gonna come regardless. I mean, if there's a market drive for it, people are going to develop it. So you got to accept that the market's never wrong. It will dictate what it wants, what it asks for in that regard. If you have the ability to create driverless trucks, then it's going to happen, and there's going to be out of work drivers. So we need to accept that. But I guess alongside that, um, what else can we develop in tandem with so that society doesn't get out of balance in terms of employment and automation? I guess I just said the same thing again.
But yeah, so I was working with this technology called RPA. It's robotic process automation. So it's like you can create a robot inside your computer which would do tasks for you. So it's crazy. So you can program it to open a browser, scroll a website, find details from it, and then copy it into an Excel sheet. So almost
Yeah.
all of the works that people are doing in these call centers, data entry jobs, this thing can take out the entire thing. Literally, the
Jeez.
whole industry of
What was
data
it
entry
called?
can. It's called RPA, robotic process automation. And there's a software called UiPath. It's free and it does all of these things for you. It's crazy the things it can do. Like
Wow.
it can create Excel sheets, it can read Excel sheets and then perform calculations on it and then send an email to someone who you have set it to. So and all of this happens real time and at the speed of a computer. So you can put all the files in a folder and set the things you want to do with those files and the computer will do it for you. So
So it
any
could have taken
process.
somebody a work day or 2 work days.
Yeah, it
My
can be done
goodness.
in like 1 hour or even less.
This
And
is I wouldn't be surprised if this happens tomorrow, you know.
yeah, it's already in here right now, just that people are not that much aware of it. But once companies start using this, a lot of people are going to go jobless.
Yeah.
Anything that can be done with the help of an if else and a for loop can be done using RPA.
So do you guys think this is going to help things? I mean, Brian brought up the idea that of a post-scarcity society where nobody will have to work and we can do things that we enjoy. But in a way, I feel like the needs that we have, the feeling that we have to get things done and be productive, is part of what makes life meaningful and fulfilling. And so I worry that a society where we all get to spend all day doing what we want won't actually be the utopia that it sounds like it will be.
Yeah, I share the same concerns for two reasons. One is the fact that it's something that Jordan Peterson says, like that the fact that not everyone can be creative. Like creativity is not something that is within every single person. It depends on certain personality traits, like how high you are in openness and intellect and all those things. So there is a wide population in our society who is not creative. And what things like AI does is it takes out all the jobs that are accessible to those people. And that's a huge number of people who are going to be jobless. And we don't have an answer for them. Like even if we give them UBI or some way, but there's still the existential problem. Like, okay, what do I do with my day? Like we need a purpose. Like we need to have something to do every day, or at least something to look forward to. So for a large number of people, it's gonna create a void. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
other
mine too.
hand, on the other hand, I see that. On the other hand, we evolved. If you look at the life of a bushman um, in sub-Saharan Africa or southern Africa, like it's kind of like a picture of like what human life was like for the first Homo sapiens. Um, you hunted as little as you had to. You cooked as little as you had to. You li- and you rested and you napped and you made love and you made music and you spent time with the people you care about. Um, Not everybody, most people, I think, enjoy just being with family, and that's more than enough for a lot of people. Um, there's always a select few that have the drive to discover and explore and hope there will always be things to learn because there's more things and the universe is more complex than we can imagine. So there's no limit to what those of us that are interested in exploring will have uh, uh, stuff to process. On the other hand, for everyone else, I think that just not having to worry about their credit score, their health insurance, if their job uh, is shaky, if um, all these, you know, having to have the latest phone and affording that and going into debt for this or that. If you don't have to worry about all that, you take all those anxieties out, then a lot of the anxiety problems that are plaguing the 21st century first world first world problems that are very real and affect people's health substantially, that might evaporate, and that might be a good thing. Um,
And your idea about the idea that science there's an essentially infinite amount of things waiting to be discovered. I mean, it's an interesting point because in the United States right now, the number of science jobs, of faculty positions at universities, is way smaller than the number of people who want those jobs. And so, in a post scarcity society, you could imagine much greater funding for scientific research and a much larger fraction of the population getting to actually pursue that, because it seems that much larger fraction actually wants to pursue that, and they're just not able to right now.
It's gonna be great for all the creative people because they'll be free of all the role playing and they can just focus on the things they like. But the problem here is that okay, so you no longer have jobs. So a lot of people are jobless. So one thing the government can do is you can bring in something like UBI. The thing with UBI is it's very dangerous because once you start giving people free money, then it's a very downhill path. Like people can vote to people who would increase their monthly UBI amount. So an alternative would be like something like a UBS, which is Universal Basic Services. So like every person has free access to internet, free food, like free basic, something like that. But even that is going into this whole territory of socialism, which hasn't worked out that well for us historically.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, that was my first thought about yeah, just that if you provide people services, then you have to administer those services, and then you need a government that's actually organized to run the economy. Um, but maybe there's some middle ground where, sort of like on food stamps, where you have to, there is only certain things you're allowed to buy. You could have something similar where with your universal basic income, you're only allowed to purchase certain services. But yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people aren't good with money, or it's
Yeah,
going to go straight to cocaine or, you know,
yeah.
yeah,
alcohol or, you name it, gambling. Um, so the universal basic services makes a lot more sense, and housing, um, uh, reliable, guaranteed housing, clothing. So if there are no jobs, if the government, it's interesting, like AI and the need for UBI, it flipped me from being uh, or did away with the last vestiges of ideological libertarianism that I had left in me. Like, because I was along that vein, not in the Reddit sort of, what you might be familiar with, but more of a academic, um, uh, mature way. Um, uh, and I wasn't where I always was. I ended up there for a little bit after becoming disillusioned with the left, and that's a whole nother story. But historically I've considered myself very left leaning. But and then I fell into libertarianism, and then UBI shook me from that because it's obvious that with UBI or with automation that jobs are going to go away. Um, so there needs to be something to function to. You can't just let people fall off the cliff.
yeah.
That's inhumane.
I feel like, I mean, in a way, I'm sort of torn between the sort of more left wing government should provide for us and libertarian perspective. I like the idea of the government providing, but I feel like for some people, they really prefer to be self sufficient. And so my hope would be that there'd be some way for people who prefer to take an alternative path, that would still be at least an option. And
Yes,
I
I
think if
agree.
there's some Oh yeah. There's some people I watch on YouTube who do like homesteading. They basically go out and live, you know, away from society independently. And to me that's a really appealing way to live. And I just hope that, in the future, if there is a future where we're all getting our needs met by the government, that people still have the option to go and live in that way.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be the
I
ideal case.
yeah, corralling everybody in to have to be subsistent on this state is ugly, can go ugly for me real fast. I don't
Mhm.
like that as as something that is necessary.
Mhm.
People need that choice, and that worries me of a totalitarian state.
Yeah.
Um, I'm worried that there's a corralling us into some 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 force, be it um, unconscious or conscious, corralling us into towards an authoritarian state.
Mhm. Yeah, and one thing that
That's
I
been a
worry.
threat for, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, no, well, just one thing that I worry about, if it comes to be that the vast majority of society is, supported on UBI, but then a few people want to go do their own thing, there's a risk that there will be strong sort of stigma attached to the people who choose to do their own thing, and that sort of social, pressure to just conform to what other people are doing, it can be so stifling. Um,
Yes.
and even if in principle there's the option to go out and homestead or live independently, whether it's actually feasible or whether you're not declared a heretic for wanting to do such a thing, is it another question.
Yeah. And the worst part is, like, the reason why, so far at least, I think no forms of socialism have ever worked is that nature works in hierarchies. So there's always a hierarchy formed, the Pareto principle and Matthew principle, whatever you want to call it, like the top 1% of everything does most of the things. So
Mhm.
it kind of applies in almost everything. Like when it's music, the top 1% of artists get listened to the most, and it's the same with anything. And the problem with something like UBI or the gap between people are doing skilled labor and the gap between people who are just sitting on their asses collecting UBI and just doing whatever they please is going to be like the social structure is going to widen even more. And because the people who are going to do skilled work are going to make so much more money because they are so much more valuable
They're going to be
now.
kings. They're going
Yeah,
to
they're
be.
going to be kings. Yeah.
For you guys, I mean, if you think about the idea of being supported by UBI and being able to sort of pursue art and science and within society versus going and living a more isolated life in a small community of people farming or grow creating food their own way, which of those sounds more appealing?
I
For
think I would like.
me, the first one.
I've got something on the tip of my tongue. Unless you want to go.
Go.
Go for it.
I would like to explore the arts of controlled spoilage, and that I include beer making, cheese making, vinegar making, wine making, because those are delicate arts, and there will be uh, no end to people's desire for the tastes that those things can elicit.
Mhm, yeah.
Interesting.
One thing along the lines of the second option, living in an isolated community, farming and that sort of thing. If you try to do that today, it really takes a huge amount of work because farming is so difficult, especially to do it on a small scale with your family. But maybe in the future, with genetically engineered crops and better technology, might actually be easy to support yourself to grow your own food. Maybe it'll be something that most people can do, and then you can you know, then even people supporting themselves in that way could make beer and cheese and all of that.
That's how the cheesemakers
It's going to be
from
great
Life of
for
Brian.
people who are like into building things, engineering and arts, because they will have all the freedom they ever want to just work on the things, and that'd be great. But I don't know if it would work for the large, majority. So the second option is more preferable, I guess.
Yeah, personally, I really like the idea of being more self-sufficient and living in smaller communities. But I think it's always hard to tell whether that's just a personal taste or whether my tastes are representative of most people or not. I always have a hard time. I try not to generalize too much and assume everyone else is like
Yeah.
me.
And another thing is that where will these small communities live? Because
Right.
Mm,
we don't have a place for them.
Well,
That's
ice
yeah.
cap melt, there'll be lots of new land.
Well, also, maybe we just have AI automate the jobs that are mundane and are just the crap that has to get done and nobody wants to do. Like, but things that require that can really benefit from a human touch,
hmm.
like seasoning that sauce just right. You know, putting the human touch on that piece of art, um, that flavor in there, that je ne sais quoi, um, that might computers might get eventually, but then we're not there yet. But the
And
little
there might,
things like that.
or, or yeah, there might even be a market for what you're saying. You know, what you're saying reminds me of people who convince themselves that like the $12,000 violin sounds better than the like machine made $500 violin. And you know,
Mhm.
people, and it's sort of a good thing. People convince themselves that the things that other people are doing are of higher quality than what machines are doing. So maybe there will always be a market for the master chef and you know the artisan, you know, whatever baker and furniture maker, all of that sort of stuff. Even if machines could do it, people might still prefer to buy from another person.
Well, think of it like this. Um, you've got the violins, but then you've got the real McCoy in terms of like, okay, McDonald's is popular, and there's two McDonald's stores in every city because they've done something that really appeals to people. Um, it's junk, but they've gotten something. They've mimicked something enough. They've put enough flavoring in that beef and made it repeatable so that it's the exact same every McDonald's you go to. But there's so you've got something perfect that appeal in one way that is perfectly appealing to everyone and succeeds everywhere. But you've got people that make real food too, and you can't automate that. You can't take that idea, that real food, that chef's vision, and put it on every street corner. There's something that can't be that can't be mimicked. I don't know what you call that.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, and the only thing that I was maybe trying to add to that, maybe what I'm saying doesn't make sense, is that even if it can be mimicked, people still from some sort of psychological thing, people still convince themselves that it can't be mimicked, even if in reality it is being mimicked.
Yeah.
And so it sort of
Hmm.
helps the case, helps the cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might be talking past each other, talking about two different things too. Like I'm kind of.
Mhm.
Hmm. And also, this is another version of the narrative, which is that every
I think
generation
if I
has.
am.
Hello? Yeah, every
I'm
generation
sorry. I was
has.
just saying I'm confused.
Yeah. Like every generation has this idea. Like, for example, I remember reading about Socrates. Like, he was worried that printing or books in general is going to kill original thinking. So, even at that time period, they had this conversation about machines or AI in general that we're having right now. Like, Socrates was worried that books are going to destroy free thinking and everything. And we saw how that turned out. And it's the same with the machine revolution 100 years back, where people were thinking that this cars and manufacturing is going to be like take out a lot of jobs and everything. And it's the same right now with AI. So maybe we are all just exaggerating the. It's gonna create new jobs eventually, and this is idea of Hegel, which is like every era is a battle between two ideologies, and the best ideology is formed from a synthesis of those two ideas. So it would be like something like you guys said, like there'll be a preference for handmade things, human-made items, as well as there's going to be a lot of cheap ones that are AI or robot made. Maybe something like that. Yeah, maybe we could end it with something like a Carl Sagan, something that Carl Sagan has said. Because,
Let me try to find a quote real quick.
yeah.
I can read it in my best podcasting voice.
Yep.
Carl Sagan once said, "Science is not perfect. It can be misused. It is only a tool. But it is by far the best tool we have, self-correcting, ongoing, applicable to everything." Carl Sagan. That's it. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. Carl Sagan. I like that.
Yeah. That
Sagan.
is the end of episode 2.